Good evening, everyone. It is 6:02 p.m. We are at 100 Polk Avenue, Cape Canaveral, Florida, at the City Hall for a City Council special meeting. I call this meeting to order. Today is December 3rd, 2024, 6 p.m. Councilmember Willis, would you please lead us in the pledge?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Davis? Had a direct line, didn't see it. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Davis?
Here.
Councilmember Jackson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kellum?
Here.
Mayor Morrison?
Here.
Councilmember Willis?
Here.
Thank you all for being here. This time we have one item on the agenda, but to approve the agenda as written or with amendments. Any changes? Go ahead and approve.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Got a motion by by Councilmember Willis, second by Mayor Pro Tem Kellum. Any further discussion? City Clerk?
Councilmember Davis?
4.
Councilmember Jackson?
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Kellum?
4.
Mayor Morrison?
4.
Councilmember Willis?
4.
All righty. Public participation, any member of the public who wishes to speak. We ask you to fill out a card. I don't have any cards up here, but tonight I think it's going to run a little differently. If anyone chooses to speak, we are open to public comment. And I believe the live stream is working. So if anyone is online who would like to speak, we will go ahead and open it up to you as well. We ask that you raise your hand. I don't see any at this time. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public participation portion of the meeting. Bring it back to the City Council. We have one item for action tonight. It's to consider owner's request to amend the Port of Call Facility Development Agreement between the City of Cape Canaveral and Wave Developments, LLC for the multi-phase Wave Village development located at 8801 Astronaut Boulevard. With that, Council, if we don't have any initial items, I'd like City Manager.
Sure, I'd be glad
Just
to.
an overview. Thank you.
Unless the city attorney wants to, I'd be glad to. Okay. The owner is here, Mr. Gall, and he's represented by his attorney, Kim Rozenka, here, and they'll be glad to make a presentation later. In fact, he's got his computer prepared to do that, but I'll just give an overview for the record and others watching online, perhaps. This is to consider owner's request to amend the existing Port of Call Facility Development Agreement between the city and Wave Development, LLC for the multi-phase Wave Village development located at 8801 Astronaut Boulevard. That's currently the site of Zarella's Pizza and the Surf Style building. Back in 2019, on September 17th, Council approved the original Wave Village Development Agreement for a Port of Call facility, and that is a specific use in the A1A Economic Opportunity Overlay District and defined as a tourist-related use with a range of uses which may include, but is not limited to, commercial parking, transportation transfer facility, vehicle rental, taxi service, retail, restaurants, visitor information center, provision for hotel and other tourist support services. So those are the entitlements that the development agreement provides. And such a facility also requires consistency with the goals of the Economic Opportunity Overlay District, which are printed there, which the owner would certainly be willing to do. The owner completed phase 1 of the project, which is the existing retail and restaurant building that I just mentioned. The CO for that was issued in 2013. Since the effective date of the DA, which was September 17, 2019, the owner did make consecutive 12-month extension requests, which were approved for the remaining phases, but because they were extension requests, those remaining 3 phases have not been built yet. Earlier this year, rather than seek an additional extension, the owner submitted a revised DA modifying phase 2 quite a bit. This was because of the idea of a food hall concept, which is really catching on in popularity. Moshe called me one day and explained to me what it was, and it's really fascinating to have that use in here for additional restaurant options for our residents and visitors. So we really are in favor of that as we were reviewing this. But he said instead of the vacation apartment rental units that we were going to do in Phase 2, we're going to push those off to only be in Phases 3 and 4. Instead, Phase 2 is going to have the food hall and some additional retail spaces, tenant spaces. Negotiations between city staff and the owner resulted in mutual agreement to the revised terms and concept plans. The only disagreement was on the phasing schedule required to file and obtain permit approvals for Phases 3 and 4, which means there was no disagreement on Phases 2. There's no disagreement on anything in 3 or 4 except for the timing, the terms of the time to file and obtain permits. Staff offered up to 8 years to file and obtain permit approval for Phases 3 and 4 each. Additionally, due to the complexity of trying to determine and verify tenant occupancy and the owner's simultaneous control over occupancy via leasing, staff proposed to maintain phasing based on calendar dates only. The owner did agree to that, to maintain phasing based only on calendar dates and not use the tenant occupancy measurement. However, the owner disagrees with staff's proposed 8 years to file and obtain approval for Phases 3 and 4. Staff proposes the applications be filed no later than 6 years after Phase 2 would be done, as a CO, and permits be obtained no later than 2 years after that, for a total of 8 years to obtain permits for each of those phases. On the other hand, the owner proposed the applications be filed no later than 10 years after the previous phase has obtained a CO, and the permit be obtained no later than 2 years, for a total of 12 years to obtain permit for each phase. The parties agree that each phase includes an additional 2-year time frame for construction. That's not been a challenge at all. The proposed development agreement, amended and restated, is included here as attachment 2. So we're going to go over the uses by the phase, and we've got a table there for uses, and we've got a table for the phasing schedule. So the uses table shows Phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. As we said before, this is just recapping it. The original use was for Phase 1, 1 restaurant, 1 retail unit. The revised use, same thing, because that's already completed. Phase 2 was going to be 32 vacation apartment rental units, the retail component, restaurant, and possibly other uses. That's been revised to food hall, restaurant, retail, and other uses, but not the vacation apartment rentals. So agreed. Phase 3, that's going to be, and it was going to be 32 vacation apartment rental units, retail, restaurant, and other uses, and now it's going to be those ones that were pushed off from Phase 2. Now it's 64 vacation apartment rentals and uses, and other uses approved by code. Agreed. And lastly, Phase 4 is 40 vacation apartment rentals and a parking garage. And now it's been revised to up to 40 vacation apartment rentals and parking garage, and that also is agreed. So all agreed on the uses. Owner and staff agree with the proposed phasing schedule for Phase 2. However, as explained above, the owner and staff have a disagreement regarding the new phasing schedule for Phases 3 and 4. So I don't want to belabor all of it. Obviously, Phase 1 is done. Phase 2 is still 2 years to file plans, just like we planned before. No change there. It's identical, 4 years total. Then the disagreement starts happening after Phase 2. So this is a restatement again. The original DA said 3 years to file plans, 2 years to construct, 5 years total. Staff proposed we amend that to 6 and 2 and 2 for 10. And owner proposed 10 and 2 and 2 for a total of 14 years. And then moving to Phase 4, identical. The same step just repeats 6, 2, and 2 or 10, 10, 2, and 2 or 14. So the difference there is 4 years for each phase. For council's convenience, we put together attachment 3, which I'd ask the city clerk to go to graphically depict the significant time differences between the original phasing schedule and the 2 proposed phasing schedules. It's the one color chart. There it is. The original DA is on the far left, and it was from 2019 extended through 2033. And then the owner proposed is the one in the middle. If this is approved by city council, say tonight, would be from 2024 down to 2056. And staff's proposed was to amend, it could be tonight, starting in 2024 and extend all the way to 2048. Now, I've spoken to the owner, and he has said he would logically like to go as fast as he could on all of this, but he's not in control of the market any more than anybody else is, and we talked about the impacts of COVID and there's just things in this world we're just not in control of that are outside forces that affect things, but he'd like to have some time, and we agree he needs to have some time to do that. So the only discrepancy is that gap right there from 2048 to 2056. That's how close we are in agreement on this. There's also, we've included in here the original development agreement, which spells out the entitlements, which would be retained here. We included the proposed revised development agreement. If we could go to that, Mia, it's attachment 2. Yeah. And go to the yellow highlighted portions. Yeah, there's one right there. So see, there's a yellow question, highlighted question for phase 4, and go to the previous page. Keep going. Okay, we missed one. There's a phase 3 has also got the yellow highlight on it. There's phase 3 right there. Next page is phase 4. So really all we're asking council to do is decide what numbers go into those blanks. Everything else is agreed. And then there's renderings, but Moshe, would you like me to put the renderings, or you want to save that for your presentation? Okay, let's go ahead and, Mia, let's put up the renderings that we included. We need to zoom out there. Yeah. Obviously, beautiful building, significant, well done. The buildings that he's done have been outstanding quality and amenities that are appreciated by our community. This is what it would conceptually look like at full build out. So what we're looking at in the foreground there is an L-shaped retail building plus the food hall. The food hall would be in that. And I'm going to call that looks like maybe 25, 30 foot high building. That's phase 2. The stuff you see behind it would be phase 3, and behind that would be phase 4. Can we go to the next page? There's another view traveling further down West Central Boulevard, and we can go on to the next one. Here's the one even further down West Central Boulevard. So the food hall's on the far right, and the up to 40 units is in the foreground there, the taller building. And it's up to, he could do less. It doesn't necessarily need to contain as many units in the last one as amended here, which staff is not opposed to that. Is there another rendering, Mia? Okay, that is more of an internal site showing what it would look like with the vacation apartment rental units. I believe there's a pool too. Is that shown in this? Yeah, there's a pool there behind the retail and food hall. Yeah, very nice. Well conceived. Any other graphics? Wall, food hall. I think is it 4 food hall service establishments, Moshe? You'll get to that. You'll get to that. And then if there's no other renderings, lastly, we included yesterday the site plans, the civil drawings, yep. So that one is showing in the bolded lines the phase 2, the L-shaped building. That's where the food hall would be plus the retail. The next page would be phase 3. That's going to be the pool and some vacation apartment rentals. And then phase 4 is the next one. That would be putting the storage of stormwater underground for the parking that would go on top of that. So that's a high-level overview. Those civil sheets do include a lot of other information about the number of units, the height of the building, the number of parking spaces, et cetera. Of course, we know we do not have a minimum parking requirement for restaurant uses, which I think provided some flexibility for the owner here in this case. And Mayor, if there's no other questions, the council could go to the owner for a presentation.
Council, thank you, City Manager. Any questions at this time? City Attorney, check in with you. Any comments, questions before we go to the owner? No, sir. Thank you. Mr. Zanko or Mr. Gall? There's an additional printout here. Is this? Okay, this was provided. Thank you.
I think I lost my screen. Okay. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out here, especially for us in this lovely project. I greatly appreciate your time. So, Waves District, formerly known as Wave Village. Due to the design change, we did feel like Wave Village doesn't fit the development, so we thought of a different name, which we kind of like, Waves District. I think that helps promote and emphasize the sense of arrival to the future downtown of Cape Canaveral, which I think we all envision Central Boulevard to be. So Waves District, you'll be able to shop, dine, play, and stay. We're turning the tide, redefining what it means to live, work, and vacation in beautiful Cape Canaveral. New name, new design, same concept. We opted to do a more sleek, modern, and nautical design, something that I feel we're missing here in Cape Canaveral, even though we're a beach community. There's not many buildings that are sleek, modern, and nautical. Once again, we're trying to promote the future downtown of Cape Canaveral. As Todd was explaining with the renderings, he explained it fairly well. I'll just emphasize a little bit on the office. The office is the bottom slide on the bottom right. When you walk in, there's a check-in office over there, and that opens up to the pool area. Give me a different slide. So the pool area is going to be reserved for the residents of the resort. However, on the bottom left slide, the green wall with the food hall logo and the door, that area is going to be accessible to anybody that dines in the food hall. So basically, it's open to the public. It is a courtyard between the buildings. We wanted the shade, we wanted the green walls, and we do have some areas that are undercover. So that area will be open to the public. Phase 2, 17,000 square feet of commercial space. That's approximately the same size building that we currently have, which is approximately 17,000 square feet, which includes a surf style and Zarella's restaurant. We're initially thinking of occupying 8,000 square feet of that for the food hall. We do have thoughts and possibly plan to have an additional 1,500 square feet for event space, and possibly another 1,500 square feet that would complement the use, and it would be in the entertainment sector. I don't feel like I want to disclose that as of yet, but obviously we do want to create not only shopping and dining, but we do want to offer some sort of entertainment that would be open to the public. And no, it's not a nightclub, don't worry. Phase 3, that's when the vacation apartment rentals will begin. We'll have 64 units in Phase 3, 19 of them studio, 15 one-bedroom, 15 two-bedroom, 15 three-bedroom. Now, these units are going to be fully furnished, keeping the same nautical theme of the exterior we're going to do in the interior. And it would be able to rent anywhere from nightly all the way to annually. We do envision having long-term residents in occupying the apartments. That will help accommodate snowbirds that can't necessarily afford purchasing a property. They could come here 2, 3, 4 months out of the year. It's really going to be able to cater to all types of demographics and budgets. Phase 4, very similar to Phase 3. Just it will have a total of 40 vacation apartment rentals, 12 studios, 6 one-bedroom, 8 two-bedroom, 12 three-bedroom, and I do envision on the top floors and the top corners to have a nice 2-story, 4 bedrooms occupying both of those corners. The key differences between Wave Village and Waves District. This is a true port-of-call facility that local residents will be able to enjoy. all commercial space facing A1A or Central Boulevard. That was one of the key reasons for my revision. When I first got the developer agreement approved in 2019, Central Boulevard was more, I can't say an alley, but it wasn't a main corridor that it is today. The city did a great job on beautifying Central Boulevard. There's 2 new hotels on Central Boulevard. So I felt it would be much better for myself and for the city if I face the commercial on A1A and Central Boulevard versus A1A inward and to the west. That's how Way Village was initially designed. Once again, we're trying to enhance and inspire growth in the community. We're trying to create the destination, hence the name of the food hall, Destination Downtown Food Hall, the feeling of arrival. This development is more of a campus/downtown layout due to the buildings being clumped together. It's a much more walkable property. We actually have more parking. It's a much better site layout. Architecturally, it's unique. It adds some flavor into Cape Canaveral. It's not your traditional cookie-cutter hotel. It has step-back features that the city has in their code and desires. And most importantly, there is going to be a food hall on site. So I believe an amazing development just got a whole lot better with the revision of Ways District. The food hall. I'm not going to read everything. I did hand out the paper. I do hope that you read it. But the food hall is very unique. Actually, the first food hall on the Space Coast is my project in downtown Cocoa Beach. It's the first one on the food hall on the Space Coast. That one is going to house 7 food vendors and 1 bar. It's 4,000 square feet under air with a 1,000 square foot patio, so a total of 5,000 square feet. Over here, I actually want to do double the size because I do envision Cape Canaveral being more of a dinner and a sit-down environment versus Cocoa Beach at that location where it's more to the beach on a takeout versus a dine-in. And really the aim on the food hall is to create spaces for local businesses to be able to thrive themselves and achieve the American dream. Opening a restaurant is extremely costly, especially nowadays with the increases of cost, but also the margins every year just get slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So I feel the food hall, being that me as a developer, I'm doing the complete build out. The vendors, all they have to do really is just come with their equipment, their menu, and a smile, and they have a place where they could start operating on a prime corner of Cocoa Beach and in Cape Canaveral. So it's really an incubator for small local businesses to be able to achieve their own dream. And for the customers, for the residents, it's a very, very cool environment because you get in Cape Canaveral to enjoy 8 different menus on one tab. So you come with the family or with friends that are in town, you have a place to sit down and really have a flavor for everyone. Not everyone likes the same thing. Sometimes it's hard to make a decision. And this place is perfect for families, for friends, and just for the community to be able to gather. This is just some renderings of the Cocoa Beach location, which we hope to open either spring or summer of 2025. It's very similar to what I'm proposing as far as the architectural features in Cape Canaveral. So I think it's going to help complement Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach and have a similar theme with one another. And I don't envision to have the same concepts in both, because I would love it if people from Cape Canaveral congregate Cocoa Beach and Cocoa Beach congregate to Cape Canaveral. So we might have the same vendors, but they're going to be on completely different menus. That way we have different offerings in each food hall. Another development by OG Enterprises. We've been developing for quite some time in the area. The most recent one being our office in Cape Canaveral on Long Point. And I truly believe in building our community to be a better place to work, live, and play. As you can see, that's a quote. It's my quote because that's what I truly believe in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for me?
Council, any questions, or Mr. Zenka, do you want to come forward now? Please. You do? Councilmember Jackson.
Okay, so I'm looking at the commercial building, and the corner area is gonna be the food court, from what I'm seeing. And then there's 8 commercial spaces within there, and how many of those are gonna be entertainment-driven spaces?
I just want to open the slide that you're referring to. Did it freeze? There we go. This slide over here on the left.
Well, what,
If you look at the top of Phase 2 north, you have 4 units. Those are going to be leased out to other businesses. And then on the corner, you have the food hall, which is about 8,000 square feet. That's where we're going to house the 8 different food vendors and the bar. The layout that you see here is very, very preliminary. Now, I just wanted to make sure that I have the size and the space to make it work, but it will change. And then the units to the back of that, that's where I do envision on creating possibly event space. For example, in Cocoa Beach, we do envision a second floor to have an event space with a catering kitchen to be able to cater to events. So we want to do something very similar there in Cape Canaveral. It will be in the house, in the back, in the rear of it, and then to the unit next door of it. Also, possibly the 3 units. I didn't want to commit to that as of yet because there's a lot of things that I need to explore additionally. But if there will be entertainment, it would be in the rear over there.
okay. And what do you envision on the types of retail businesses? You know, because like Zarella's is we all eat at Zarella's. We love Zarella's. And then we have this surf style there now, which was Beach Wave. And we didn't really have a beach wave in this area in Cape Canaveral. So what do you envision as far as the retail vendors or types of businesses that you would want to be looking for?
So I do envision possibly a spa to do nails, something in the service. I do envision possibly a candy store. I actually lease out to a very high-end candy store in Cocoa Beach. It's in Wave Center. If anybody ever visited that store, it's a very nice, cool, and unique store. He's interested in entering into there. Obviously, it would be uses that complement each other. Anytime I lease out, I always want to make sure that the businesses complement each other. I'm notoriously known that I don't allow smoke shops in my units, even though I get a call every week. I don't think it's family friendly. I am a smoker myself. I smoke cigarettes, but I just don't think that that's the family-friendly vibe that I want on my properties. So I'm very particular, and I do like businesses that complement each other.
I just had those questions so that we would understand as people look at the project, what would be, you know, the types of businesses you would be looking for. I know myself, when I was looking for places to have restaurants, you know, an event with a restaurant, we have only a few that are not in the port and not in Cocoa Beach. So, and we have almost zero retail. So that's why I was asking that. Thank you.
No problem. And by the way, on the retail standpoint, I don't know if anybody entered into Surf Style ever since they took over Beach Wave. They did a great job. It actually has brand names, so it's like a department store. So I highly encourage, if anybody hasn't been there since the rebrand, I highly encourage them to enter into the store over there.
Councilmember Jackson, anything at this time? Anything else?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Willis.
Well, On the food hall, food court,
Food hall.
food hall. I like the concept of multiple menus because that certainly would promote marital bliss, particularly for me anyway. But do you have a idea of how long you would take to fulfill all of those spaces?
In the food hall?
Yeah.
If I use Cocoa Beach as an example, we're almost 100% occupied. I have one unit left that we're already eyeballing a few different options. I don't want to commit as of yet. I want to, make sure I pick the best of the best. The selection process is tedious. It's not easy. It's not show me the money, enter into the space. It's more in depth than that. But the reaction in Cocoa Beach was phenomenal. We received a bunch of applications. I encourage anybody interested in seeing what type of vendors we entered into Cocoa Beach. You could see it on our website, destinationfoodhall.com. We list 7 out of the 8 vendors. We're keeping the 8th one kind of under wraps until we feel it's time to share their story.
So-
And by the way, I'm sorry, it does also share each individual story on their page. Beautiful stories of people just really clinging on to their dream and trying to make it for themselves. I highly encourage reading the stories. That's what I really like about it.
So your selection process would try to eliminate any redundancies?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We want to create more options than we already have to offer, and I take the area in consideration as well. For example, in Cocoa Beach, we didn't want Italian because there's enough Italian restaurants over there. Obviously, in Cape Canaveral, we'll choose not to do Italian because everybody loves Zarellas. But we do obviously keep in mind what the surrounding businesses have to offer.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, or
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. As far as the retail shops with Surf Style doing brand names and all, what are you considering for the retail shops? Because, it's been in our surveys of this community that people want places to go and shop, boutique-y kind of things. What are you thinking for?
A boutique is an option as long as it's not a beach style boutique. It could be an evening dress type boutique. I tweaked my commercial space model to be able to attract smaller type businesses. Standard 5 years ago were spaces of 22,000 to 2,500 square feet. I kept this in mind with today's rent prices and the cost of doing business. I kept my units at 1,250 square feet to be able to accommodate those small type of boutique type shops, spas, and so on and so forth.
Another question is your vacation rental apartments, 12 studios in Phase 4 and the other bedrooms and all. How will that fit into our city with our 7-day vacation rental code that you have to rent for 7 days?
So in the developer's agreement, it defines my use as a vacation apartment rental, which allows me the ability to rent anywhere from 1 night all the way up to 1 year.
Mayor, I could
It's
clarify that.
because it's commercial.
Yeah, the minimum 7-day only applies in the R districts, the rental districts.
Okay, gotcha. And, they look beautiful. Have you considered, or it's probably a financial thing, but having apartments that people buy and live there is it more financially viable to do it this way? Because, we have a housing problem here in the city.
One of the restrictions that I do have under my developer's agreement that everything needs to be under common ownership, so that doesn't allow me to condo it out.
Okay.
But I do have a project across the street that I'm working on for affordable. It will have affordable. So I do have that in mind, and hopefully the project across the street will be able to help fill that void.
And the timeline that you're asking for, is that something new for developers? financially and occupancy, is that something that is up and coming, developing, new for developers?
Occupancy is not that uncommon. I don't think the city of Cape Canaveral has done one like that, but I know of scenarios that occupancy was a driver for timelines.
Okay, and then the other question was for the city staff. So the reasoning for staff to recommend less time is just that, what's the reasoning for that, that we don't want, we want to develop faster? Is that the only reason why?
Just to put some outside constraints on it, and Anthony certainly can say more to this than I can, but typically, development agreements don't go out for, what is this, 2056? 2056, so that's 32 years from now. That's a rather long period, and to my experience, we've never seen one go out that far. Anthony, I don't know if you have some more experience on that. You want to weigh in?
It depends on the complexity of the development project, first and foremost. And then, the cities that I represent are not in the business of approving speculative developments. So there seems to be certain clear timelines within reason. It's a discretion. There are phased development projects. This is a phased development project, so a phasing schedule is common. My experience, calendar dates are the primary driver for development schedules. Question. My experience, if you were going to look at a statutory development agreement, which this is not, I think the statute in Florida is like 30-year time period. Now, with all of that said, I mean, even if it's a tight time schedule or tighter time schedule, there are built-in provisions for extensions of time. That keeps the project, if circumstances warrant extensions, extensions in my experience are freely given. Expectation. And another thing to keep in mind when you extend development, and I'm going beyond your question, one of the things that the cities like to do is change codes. So you need to be cognizant of the fact if you go so far out in a phased development project, nobody can predict what the codes may be or the statutory requirements may be. And sometimes you don't want to extend the time period so far and not be able to address code changes or statutory changes because you've locked yourself into a development agreement, 30 years ago. So you got to be cognizant of that point too. In this case, I mean, the difference is very small.
4 years, right?
Per phase. Yeah, so a total of 8 years difference.
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis?
No, I was going to say, I know a lot of people that would wish we'd have a grocery store or some type of, but these are all too small or anything to do any of that. So I was just looking for a place that they can go and get food so they can take it up to their rental. But it's all good.
The questions about occupancy and time, we're just talking about time.
Yeah,
now.
occupancy was taken
The occupancy
out.
was originally, as far as, this is city attorney, the phase development agreement, roughly how many of those have we done in the city?
In my tenure, I'm really going into the recesses. I know of at least one for the former Cape Carib.
What's the
now
timeline on that
Vacation
one?
Holiday Inn. I can't remember exactly, but it's a bigger project. It's a different concept. It's a vacation resort, which is has different requirements. But there are time schedules built in there. I think that project may have started somewhere around in the 2000s, early 2000s, if I remember correctly. And that project still, to this day, 24 years later, still has at least 2 more potential timeshare buildings that have to be constructed. So and those are pushed out probably to, I think, 2035, roughly. Don't quote me on that, but 2035, 2040, because the schedule was adjusted when the Holiday Inn Hotel was built. Because they changed the sequencing. Rather than do a timeshare building, they preferred to do the hotel sooner rather than later. So because the hotel was supposed to be a two-story two buildings, it was combined into one, so they were given more time for the next timeshare building. So that goes to my example that the city has adjusted development schedules based on the developers' plans. I know that one, and I'm not sure off the top, Bogger might have one, or is proposing.
Yeah.
He'll be proposing one in the future for the build-out of his hotel complex in the same vicinity. But I don't think he's quite there yet on his
I think he
schedule.
also had one before,
He might have. I mean, he has a port of
the
call.
one right across the street, the parking.
There might have been one there too. But there was a hotel that was supposed to go there, and I think he moved that to across the street to accommodate what's the name of the business there? The health.
Acuity?
Yeah, yeah. And they renovated that building rather than build a hotel. So the city made some adjustments to that at the request of the developer. Another example where the city has shown a lot of flexibility with developers' plans.
So the Cape Carib, just wanted to note for consistency and to try and remain, that was if it was 35 to 40 years. So, city manager, I think we're looking at well, we're already in 2024, believe it or not.
Sorry. Yeah, 32.
Yeah, so it's not, kind of going off what Mayor Pro Tem's question was about, the time.
Oh, yeah, but I think, and I'm not trying to penalize this at all, but we do need to consider that the original development agreement didn't start in 2024. It started before this. We're resetting that clock. So to be fair, you need to include all the years from 2019 as well, if we're comparing apples to apples with Cape Carib. I believe theirs was 2002 when that started. And we're not opposed to resetting that effective date. And as the city attorney said, these are kind of living documents, and what the owner intends to do today is very much in his vision, but 5-10 years from now, his vision may have changed, and it can change again then. And that's why we put in these extensions, and like have been approved before, and they could be approved again. Things do change. I think the idea right now for a food hall is a fantastic idea. And, our citizen surveys have said over and over for years they want additional choices for dining. This scratches that itch. And who knows when it gets to phase 3 or phase 4, if some other idea might come up to the owner and he say, I'd like to change and do this instead. It's all speculative at this point, and he's asking for some leeway and over time.
For Anthony.
Councilmember Davis.
Anthony, when you were saying like statutes could change or city ordinance or anything could change in the time frame, does that mean like this is grandfathered, that we would still have to honor this? Or how, if they go to change the plans for a different phase, would they have to follow those new statutes or new ordinances? Or would we be with this?
Well, I mean, the agreement does say that the concept plans, okay, that they have to go through the permitting requirements, and they're going to have to comply with certain code provisions. My point is, in some cases, there are provisions in the agreement, right, that could serve as an obstacle to prevent the city from enforcing codes. Now, let me give you one example. And I'm not suggesting that the code is going to change, but the uses are specifically stated in this agreement. 20 years from now, I mean, it's not developed and the city council says, well, we don't want retail there. We don't want restaurants at this location. The code changes, right? It's no longer permitted. Well, then you got an old development agreement out there where the use that is entitled, but the code has changed, and from a zoning code perspective, it's no longer allowed, but you're stuck with the agreement. I mean, those sorts of issues you have to take into consideration. And while the city is another issue too, is when you enter into these long-term agreements, one of the things you need to take into consideration, even though the city is not providing reservation of sewer capacity or any other utility capacity, you enter into these agreements from a planning perspective. Okay, the density and intensity of this long-term agreement has to be factored into your capital planning. Okay, so it gets into the numbers, while may not be a reserved capacity, it has to be accounted for when you're trying to determine whether or not you're bumping up to capacity limits, because you've made some commitment. So you look at those issues as well.
Before we, and I know we went with staff, Mr. Gall, any more questions for Mr. Gall this time? Though I do have one question. You talked about the food hall in Cocoa Beach. That this one would be more of a sit down.
Yes.
Is that Cape Canaveral is more beach flip flops, and this is? Can you talk a little bit more about what that
Yes,
difference would be?
Yes, when you consider the location in Cocoa Beach, I am a half a block from the beach. People reach that destination to go to the beach. They park there, they go to the beach. It's more day traffic, more to go. Take out to the beach or order quickly and eat quickly. The destination is the beach. Whereas over here in Cape Canaveral, the beach is more reserved for the residents, not really for our visitors. And the majority of the visitors that do come here obviously come in a 1 mile stretch from the entrance to the city to the Radisson, and they congregate primarily at nighttime, because in the daytime they're busy either going to an attraction or to Cocoa Beach or to some sort of beach. And the congregation here in this area is more evening traffic. So being that it is evening traffic, I do believe a sit-down would be more proper. Just to kind of sum it up in words, Cocoa Beach is going to be, a beer crowd, and Cape Canaveral will be more of a martini crowd, just because of the environment and the setting that we're setting in the whole area over there. So it's more evening time, and I think if you ask any restaurant in the area, including Zarella's, they will tell you that their evening traffic is probably 70–80% of their overall business, even if they're open for lunch.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Gall? Councilmember Willis?
No, I just wanted to make a statement. I've been to a similar food hall in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it is pretty much sit down, but they have the seating areas that are more eclectic and almost in alcoves. So you can almost have your own private little space as you're eating, and you're going to any number of a restaurant to get whatever it is you want, and you all meet in your one table, your one area, and it's geared more to professionals, the one in Charlotte, and I can see where this is could be geared towards your vacationer who is here waiting for a cruise, or people like myself who live on the river behind it and want to go do something other than Italian. So, I like the idea. I just wish you would start building it tomorrow.
For phase two, I will be ready as soon as possible if, my best case scenario is get it permitted and break ground within a year and a half.
I know we might have some more questions. Just want to say thank you. I know that's commercially zoned. That's been, the intent was some sort of commercial use, whether it's a grocery store. And we've seen a lot of hotels come in, and those hotels are built without really amenities for the locals. There's no restaurants. We just talked about rooftop access in the last meeting because the residents have been very clear about the impacts of those. And I know you're local. I know you've done projects in Cocoa Beach. You're involved on social media. You really try to listen to the residents, and that's very much appreciated in your time today. The development agreements, knowing the history of them, if there's a justification in my mind for development agreements, I think this is one really was the first one back in 2019. In this revision, I do see the changes, which I think is closer to, much closer to the vision of the city and what we're looking for. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, yeah.
On your port of call classification, when do you envision commercial parking, transportation facilities? What phase do you see that coming in?
That would probably be incorporated either on the third or the fourth phase.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions? I know I keep asking that, and I asked one, so we can get back up and down. Thank you again. Mr. Zanka? Oh, absolutely. Mr. Z-
Kim Rosanka, Lacey Lyons Rosanka, Rockledge, Florida, here on behalf of OG Enterprises. This development agreement I've been involved with from the beginning, and I don't think it's speculative. I don't like that phrase. I think it's disingenuous. Every development, I believe, has some speculation to it. This has evolved just as the Cape Creed evolved. Just to be clear, that Cape Creed 2002, it now extends out till the last permit has to be applied for in 2040, December 31st of 2040. So if you add 2 years for permitting, 2 years for construction, you're talking January of 2045. So this is 2002 to 2045 for Cape Creed Holiday Inn. And they're not local. OG Enterprises is local, so I'd ask you to consider that as well. This does have definitive timeframes. It does have built-in extensions, but to be honest, back in 2022, we were told we would be given no more extensions. And this was even after COVID, and I invoked the permit extension for, now that gentleman is no longer with the city, but I mean, we really weren't sure that we would get those built-in extensions. City managers change, city councils change, so there's no guarantee of extensions, even though they are built in. Also, I do not ever remember the city offering us 6 years and 2 years. I don't remember ever having that discussion with Mr. Morley. I did discuss with Mr. Garganese, and he said, I think this is what staff might agree to, but it was 8 years and 2 years, not 6 years and 2 years. And I have an email to that exact. So what we're really talking about is 10 years to 12 years. 10 years to 12 years. So the 6 and 2 was never offered to us as far as I know, and I asked Mr. Gall, and he did not recall that as well. So we're just seeking the flexibility to allow him to do this. And frankly, you still have control because you still have site plan approval. They still have to take every one of these phases through site plan. And so P&Z will look at it. They're going to have to meet the codes in existence at that time. So there is still city control over what's going to be built there, even if codes do change. They're still going to have to comply with site plan. So this is a phased development. it's a good development. I think you all are appreciative of the development, and Mr. Gall would like to go forward with it, but he would indeed like the 10 years and 2 years of the flexibility. He was trying to do the occupancy because this is inexpensive. This is, for the most part, going to be self-financed. So there's that as well. And we would just ask that you consider his request for the 10 years and 2 years versus the 6 and 2 years, or as I recall it, the 8 and 2 years. So with that, we can answer any more questions. If the community has questions, either online or in the audience, we're happy to answer those as well.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenka. I do have a public comment card here, and I think we can go up and down. Ms. Shannon Roberts, Dr. Roberts, please come forward. And if those of you who are listening online would like to speak or comment on this, we ask that you please just raise your hand, and once the time comes, we'll unmute you and give you an opportunity to speak. Dr. Roberts?
Thank you so much, and appreciate your proposal for the city. Shannon Roberts, 703 Solana Shores Drive in Cape Canaveral, next to Cape Caribe, so that's really resounding with us as to the impact on the residential community there. One of my key questions is always, how does this fit into the city master plan? Again, as you know, I've been encouraging us, just as a resident, to have a whole WHOLE plan for the city, because I continue to see us piecemealing again, so this concerns me. Village versus district, I guess I was curious about the terminology. To me, village sounded very warm, kind of friendly for the community. District, to me, is more of a governmental definition, so that's the reason I'm just giving you one resident's reaction to that. Height, again, as I read the proposal, it's going to be 65 feet again. I'm, again, going back to the 45-foot restriction historically that the residents have asked for, and I'm still mystified as to why we need 65 feet now. Originally, it was because of air conditioning requirements, and now we've evolved into where this is a norm instead of the exception. I appreciate your asking about the vacation rentals, because as a community, we were trying to encourage fewer of those, and that's the reason this is somewhat puzzling to me, that we might be encouraging that concept, acknowledging that concept in the city. Again, the consideration of affordable housing. You know, again, this is just something I'm not sure the city has got a grasp, but my perception is we don't have a grasp in our approach to that, and this to me suggests an opportunity where we would have asked a developer to contribute towards some affordability housing as part of the agreement. The residents' reaction, Puerto de Rio, you mentioned that. You know, it's a good place to have a place to eat, but there's the noise factor. You know, what happened at Bayside is, we know the hotel right abutting their backyards. And to me, just even though I'm not in that part of the city, I just felt for those homeowners. I'm not sure we gave sufficient notice to those residents, but I just know we would have been horrified, at least from my understanding of the residents nearby. So I would be asking, what are the residents' reaction? It may be very welcoming, like Mr. Willis suggested, but it may be a noise factor, light factor. You know, I just don't know that we've looked into those aspects of it. Green space, I know that you acknowledge some green space, but I guess I didn't get the sense of the green space design for the development that at least would have been apparent to me. And then, as you may remember, we had a facade design proposal a while back, or at least the consideration of having, may I have just another minute?
Yeah, council, no issue with extending that, please. Yes, thank you.
We had proposed having a facade design for the city. So as he was mentioning, you know, we come into the city, you know, we just look like a hodgepodge right now, whereas there was, at one time, the vision of the residents was to have some kind of a facade design where we would have consistency, at least in knowing you were in Cape Canaveral. Right now, it just, to me, looks like a, I'm not even sure it's a puzzle palace, but it's just, it's very disorganized in my observation. And the height is just, in my opinion, just really not good. And then lastly, just a consideration for traffic design. Right now, when you come from the East Central and go over to Manatee Park, for example, crossing A1A, I'm I'm mentioning this only because as the development occurs, there more than likely will be attraction from the east side of the city to go over to this new development. And in that regard, because of the way the lanes are, right across from McDonald's, it stops the traffic there when you have to go across A1A to get to the west part of the city. So I mention that because it's on that significant corner, and I would just ask that the city maybe consider putting another lane in there so that you have a straight across lane, one that turns left, or maybe that one would turn left also, and then the right lane, because right now we stop the traffic when we have to go to Manatee Park if we're coming from the east side. So those are my considerations, and I just wanted to put them forth. Appreciate your considering that from a resident's perspective.
Dr. Roberts, do you mind if I just clarify something? And first of all, thank you. You've been with the city longer than all of us, that's for sure, in your institutional and historical knowledge about the visioning back in 2009. You've remained consistent on it, and I value everything you talk about in respects to the concerns. What was it?
Height, noise, facade,
Yes,
master plan.
So the economic overlay district creation, and they would have to go through the community appearance board, and that is where I believe the facade would come into play.
Yes, this was part of the visioning effort when we did it through Radisson years ago, and it was just recommended as an evolution that we have this master plan would include that facade design. And what advisory committee it went to, that would be probably a distribution of that responsibility to propose something to council, once it evolved. But right now, my perception is we're just so piecemeal right now, even the advisory boards, what they're presenting to you and so forth. So I'm just mentioning that. I just hope we get a master plan going so, we can have a vision of the city that could be shared by the residents.
And the style that you remember that was important, we've talked about Key West, Mediterranean, modern.
Exactly, and that's the reason this nice person mentioned trying to be consistent with the architecture of the city. And as we know, just like you mentioned, we've got a whole bunch of different designs as you come into the city. And the undeveloped part of the city are the older buildings. That's where there's an opportunity to have facade grants. There was, financial opportunities there with grants. And it was just to have some understanding of what the whole of City of Cape Canaveral might look like. And as you point out, it might have been a residential input as to what we decided, because we decided Mediterranean here. Others had recommended considering Key West and so forth. So we've just got a whole hodgepodge now, as we know. And that's the part that I just hope we can get some sense of city and community going before it's too late. Because we just get, understandably, a developer's perspective, but it's not necessarily the resident's perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't mean that contradictory, but it's just we don't know what it is for the city, for the residents.
Okay. I'm checking online to see if anyone who's participating would like to speak. Do not see any hand raised at this time. If you do intend to speak, I'll repeat. Maybe you just joined us on this matter. Please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. A few people on there, and thank you for joining us. With that, Ms. Rosenko was speaking. We got a public comment card. Were there any questions for Ms. Rosenko or Mr. Gall? Please.
Can I just respond to that?
Yes, please.
Because I was part of that in 2009 on the community vision. The community vision resulted in a Key West themed building. When I got my first phase approved, I was actually handed a moratorium on construction due to the community vision that at that time was a Key West themed building. Unfortunately, I had to fight to get the approval, which I did. And as you see, my building is more of a Mediterranean style building, very similar to City Hall. So I think I help create that vision. Not that I try to fight the vision, I help create the vision. And I firmly believe with the New Waves District, I firmly believe that's going to create a little creativity in our community, where not all the hotels are cookie cutter hotels that look the same, doesn't matter what city they're in. So I think I add a little bit of identity to our town versus a traditional hotel. And also on the short-term rentals, I think it's actually in the city's benefit that short-term rentals get pushed out to the commercial districts, so they're not your neighbors, they're not having parties until 2 o'clock in the morning, and I think it's a lot more convenient to try to handle those type of clienteles in a commercial district that has a manager on site all the time and a true operation behind the short-term rentals. So I think it would actually be a benefit for the residents for the short-term rentals. Not all short-term rentals are bad, but unfortunately there is some bad apples, and I hope to help solve that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, heard some public comments. Councilmember Jackson.
Okay, I wanted to give a couple of just updates as far as, and this is for people watching and our citizens, because we have had a real downturn in short-term rentals throughout the city. And when we look at short-term rentals, we have the short-term rentals that can be nightly if you're in the commercial district. And if you're not in the commercial district, you're strictly supposed to adhere to the 6-night minimum, 7-day minimum. And right now, those rentals are non-existent in our city. And we have a huge number of short-term rental properties throughout Cape Canaveral. If you do a search, you get results that come up to 2,256 units, literally. We've got Melbourne tapping into the Cape Canaveral area. We have Cocoa Beach tapping into the Cape Canaveral area. And so I can totally understand Mr. Gall's desire to want to push that development date out, because if he gets in there and that trend doesn't change on short-term rentals, he could end up wanting to change that vision or that last phase, for example. So that makes sense to me business-wise. But I want our citizens to know this, because we have major problems with real estate, and it's dropping right now in our city. With condo complexes and SBD 40, huge assessments are coming out. So condos are sitting on the market longer, the prices are dropping. Our home prices are dropping, and our real estate that is out there, it's taking longer to sell. So we have a huge number of investors that are not from our area, but it is a fact, and we may have some market correction with that, because a lot of those properties that were purchased during the pandemic were literally properties where locals lived before. And so that's something that we have to think about, those things, as we think about what we're doing up here in A1A with the strongly from many people in our city. No more hotels up there, no more hotels. So this project does give them, us as residents, at least the 40 years as a person sitting on council today. However, with the situation with what I'm talking about, that could end up, if cruises drop again, and we saw them all sitting out offshore 3 short years ago, and that port was empty because they didn't want to pay the docking fees. So, and they get down there and they're like, where can I go? So we can't look at it like they're not going to want to do that, or that they'll want to go down to Cocoa Beach where it's easier to get the beach. Many of them I see walking. They're coming off of a cruise and they don't have cars, or things of that nature. So as we look at whatever we're going to do, these are just some considerations. I personally, I've heard repeatedly our residents saying, we don't want hotels up there. This is an alternative to be flexible enough for Mr. Gallen for OG Enterprises so that they can move their project forward and us be able to work with them if there are economic changes or building, you know, business plan changes for him.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. Any other comments at this time? Just talking through it.
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Kellum.
Just like to say that, the pictures of this is more oriented to what we want in our city as far as the hotel, the way, or the vacation rentals. The color, the design is all more of what we want in our city. I think Mr. Gowell is a local. He lives here. He cares about our city. He's done a remarkable job with his office on Long Point. It looks so nice, and it's really upgraded that part of the city. I like the idea of the vacation rentals in a commercial plan, and I think we should move forward and help him out.
You,
Mayor.
Councilmember Willis.
I just wanted to address the issue about A1A and their, Ms. Roberts' concern. Having these types of agreements and plans presented allows us to go to FDOT and say, hey, things are changing. I mean, we've already, over the last 3 years, been able to make some adjustments to their plan on A1A because that was done years ago, and they had no idea there was going to be some development done here in the city. So they are very willing to change their plans, as we saw with the roundabout. They changed it for that, but with development that is happening in the city, we can get those changes that we need to make this safer. Already, we're going to have a pedestrian hybrid beacon crosswalk just to the north of the hotels that will hopefully encourage people to use that crosswalk versus scattering across the highway. But presenting this to FDOT engineers, they'll make corrections and they'll make adjustments on how traffic moves through there. And with any other further development on the north end, we're going to get those adjustments. So I don't see that as an issue. We can easily get, well, maybe not easily, but we can get FDOT to make alterations and help us out.
That's an excellent point, and for bringing that forward makes a lot of sense. I look at the corner today, and it's vacant, and I think that the property owner in the phase one, the village and the plans, the original development agreement, as far as some other comments is in regards to the citizens, especially Porta del Rio, knowing is the transparency has been really good. There's a website that's been dedicated to educate and inform the public about it. And I think that when we looked at the changes, adding these aesthetic improvements, use improvements, no real change in the quantity of rentals and total. When we drive as residents by the hotels, they're sort of, especially if there's no impact fees, great, but we know that the impacts from traffic and a lot of toilets flushing and on our community, and as Councilmember Jackson said, but I think we would all echo, we have heard the concern, and Dr. Roberts has been one of those who's been very clear with it and tried to help. This sort of brings a little bit of life to that corner, and I think it gives the residents an attachment that we all share today with Zarellas, as you said. It's a special place, not because of not only the building, but I want to just point out a second part, and I was listening to this, is the process to choose who those tenants and occupants are. It's not the highest bidder, it's the right fit for this area. That is certainly a proof of concept. And I have been paying attention to the food hall, and I've seen some of the names of those in the destination down in Cocoa Beach, and very popular places in other parts of the county. And going back to the old food trucks debates we had in here, food trucks were really hard to pull off in Cape Canaveral without a special event permit. And this sort of bridges that gap, I think, and never even thought about, I didn't know what if, I'd never been to the one before in my life, but you mentioned the one in North Carolina. You know, food trucks is kind of like that stepping stone, and it still is today. But this sort of opened my eyes, and I'm very excited to see it. And we do have sort of that second mover's advantage. You know, there's a lot of risk in doing something first, a lot of reward too. But we get to kind of see what happens in the success down there. And I think, you know, keep echoing Dr. Roberts, and something she's talked about, she didn't even bring it up tonight, or I didn't hear it at least, was she talked about the Class A, the professional type businesses in here, you know, doctors' offices, I've heard grocery stores, auto retail, those types of places. I think, or, you know, like auto parts stores that, you know, you got to go to Merritt Island and things like that. There's a lot of risk on the developer to take, but when it comes to restaurants, I think that is one. When the city attorney talked about use changes, I don't see that one changing that much. And it's certainly nails we heard, or some sort of boutique beauty. Those things, you're always going to need to get your hair cut somewhere, I think. And we certainly changed today in the world with Amazon in the way we buy goods and services. But that corner today, correct me if I'm wrong, could be a hotel. I mean, permitted, no development agreement needed. And so when I look at 40 years, we're sort of setting something in place that we hope the future councils see as a benefit. And I think just like we went in and we deemed certain properties conservation a few years ago, first time Cape Canaveral really did that. We did that for, you know, forever and ever. And so this sort of is a step in knowing and recognizing that it is a commercial use. It's not a hotel. We're seeing Blue Origin, Space Race, all those things. You know, the folks that need to work for 60, 90 days or temporary work come here. And the short-term rentals. I mean, that is one of the most vicious topics in this city, because it is the few bad actors that cause nightmare for the residents who live next door. If it can relieve that, and if it's not competing with hotels, it's competing with short-term rentals, I think it is. That's a good thing, because it takes the use and puts it where I think along A1A, to where Cape Caribe sort of puts that commercial use like Cocoa Beach, you know, right on that beach. And people always say, well, I don't know what it is. And our city manager said this, and we've talked about it. We've all heard it. How do you like Cape Canaveral? Most people say, I love it. And they, you know, folks don't necessarily articulate or know why, but one of the things is we have residential zoning along the beach. It's like, you kind of walk through, and it's supposed to taper from A1A down to the beach and protect those views. And over the years, we've seen some things. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful that it continues to align with the vision, as you were saying, Mayor Pro Tem. I do think Dr. Roberts brought up some good points, especially on the master plan. One of the big things from 2009 was a downtown And it's really hard to figure out where that would be. I think we've talked about downtowns. Central was one of those areas where that opportunity, the zoning's right. I guess that's the most western commercially zoned property. That would abut the vacant lot I think it's residentially zoned
Which property?
to the west,
Yeah.
Mr. Ringo's old property.
Yes. The vacant one.
So that's going to be a residential
Residential.
use.
It's R3 currently,
Okay, so no hotel could go there.
right, without a land use designation change.
And so this would kind of be the end of where commercial meets residential.
Yep.
And then that commercial goes on across as we head towards the beach. It is a long walk. I'm sure you see them because the only beach access they can go to is the Ridgewood access, or if they know the inside local trail there to hit the Harbor Heights. But that is something we've talked about, I think, at strategic visioning meetings when we were talking about golf carts, is that, can you get around the city bikeable, walkable golf carts in a circle, connect to Cocoa Beach, connect to the port, work with FDOT as we had. And I think this sort of gives a destination for residents in addition to what's there with Zarellas. And so I'm excited. I would be shocked if it actually takes that long, just knowing that the mechanisms in place, that it's a loss of money to continue to wait and pay in taxes. And the time we spoke through this today, I hope we can zoom out and talk about how we get away from that hodgepodge of some of the, I think, hotels and the eclectic businesses and try to make sure we're doing the things we can to make it cohesive. And it's undeniable that is a major, if not the most, and that's, when you talk about sense of arrival, you're coming down the 528 connecting and heading south on A1A. And that's the first opportunity with the signal there to slow down, where most people, well, where am I, right? And so thank you for talking through it, Councilmember Davis.
One of the big things right now is like affordable housing, and you commented that you have a plan for affordable housing. Can you say anything about that? Is that in Cape Canaveral?
Yes, it is in Cape Canaveral. The city is aware of it.
Okay,
It is on A1A. It is called Royal Wave. Wave, by the way, is my last name. Translated, that's why we keep Wave. But yes, it's the first that I know of in Cape Canaveral or Cocoa Beach under the Live Local Act that came into law last year. So I am working with the city to try to get that approved as well.
that way, if anybody asks about all that, we have an option for affordable housing too, so we have that comes
Yes,
through.
there is going to be an affordable apartments aspect of the overall development.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mayor, if I
Yes.
could add something, Councilmember Jackson properly said that we do all hear from time to time, please no more hotels. We all hear that. This particular development agreement, the owner went to great lengths to create a discriminator between his project and the typical hotels in Section G. Most of the hotels in Cape Canaveral are either studios or one bedrooms, but these will also have 2 bedrooms, 3 bedroom, and 4 bedroom units. Plus, they will also have kitchen facilities in each unit. That makes them more of a longer term stay. And while he said that he does want to keep it under common ownership, it wouldn't be condominiumized. It's a very different product than our typical hotel. So the people who stay there will be looking for a different type of experience than a typical hotel guest.
Exactly.
And see, those people are longer term and they're down in units by the beach now. So they're staying in condos down, rental condos down in the beach area, which in the residential units, that's what you want. Because those guys, next to your house, if you're sitting there living there, those guys come, they go to work, they leave at night, and that kind of thing. So there's definitely going to be we're taking away from one market. I'm just saying this with this development, because we've got Cape Winds, we've got Canaveral Towers, we have Royal Mansions. All of those have been rental units since the 80s. Weekly rentals.
Managed.
Yeah. And so we're taking business potentially away from people down on the beach with guests that want to be on the beach. And right now, a lot of the rental units are depending upon those space workers to try to make any money at all. However, like I said, with the way that the market's heading, there may be a correction coming soon, because I'm going to tell you, I have had myself, I'm seeing massive amount of investors selling their units here. They're getting out because they're not making the money, and because the dues have gone up so high and insurance is outrageous. So depends on what the new investors, this is going to be another change of the way things are happening in our world in Cape Canaveral, because prior to the pandemic, we had apartment complexes that were affordable, that people could live all throughout our city. And those have been turned into vacation rentals. They've been renovated. They've been in the middle of the island, and people that are coming for vacation want to be down there. People that are going on cruises want to be up there, but they're looking to get down there. So it's still not, if we packed the whole commercial district with rentals of every kind, we're still going to have people going down trying to get to the beach. And so as we look at these kinds of things and all of that, we as a council have to consider that, and how do we accommodate those guests getting, where they go and all those things, because it's still going to impact our neighborhood. The other thing I wanted to say too is this was decided by a prior council. So this is already approved. This project is a done deal as far as, and this is information for our residents and citizens, because the way we've discussed it tonight sounds like we're looking at approving this or not. No, we're looking at approving the extension for the development of the phases in this meeting, so that OG can get their business started with this. But this was approved prior councils, along with all the other hotels that have gone in and all of the changes to our city. And so, just so everyone realizes, this is where we're at right now. And this is that last number that they're looking for with the port, with having 14 hotels. Well, this really fills the niche, because I can still come in as a cruise person and stay 2 nights. But I could also be a snowbird that comes in for a month or 3 months.
The flexibility is there.
Yes, but I wanted to make sure that our participants on the bridge and people that haven't been involved before understood this was already approved by prior councils. So we're just looking at how long and how to make that work for OG.
Thank you. Council, if there's not any more discussion, or city manager, city attorney, anything out of these discussions, Councilmember Willis.
Just have a quick question for my own curiosity. Is there a limitation on the number of extensions?
I didn't see.
Just, there's anticipated timeframes that, just to have a placeholder there, but there's typically unlimited number of extensions.
Okay. So either way, whether we went with staff proposal, Mr. Gall could extend it.
Well, this is also an amended development agreement. That's the bringing in the food hall. That's an important distinction.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that. I would say, Councilmember Jackson, it's not just an extension of time. I believe it's an improvement from the former development agreement.
Absolutely.
A big improvement.
Yes, because the plan has changed. So it's a change of the site plan and also an extension. So yes, you're correct. I just wanted to make sure that our residents knew, in case someone's new here, it's just moved here. This has been in the works. It was approved by prior council to move forward. We just need to drill down and make sure that we can get him started and be a city where since this is approved, that we're getting him started and get his business going. So.
Member Willis?
Well, it was brought up that we were going to have a lot of visitors who are walking to the beach, wanting ways to get to the beach. There are things in the works with Space Coast Area Transit where we could have ancillary transportation based off of the bus routes, where citizens could pick up a Uber type, but it's run by Space Coast Area Transit, that would run to the beach, through the port, to areas within the city. So those things are in the works. There's possibilities out there. And it may take a few years, and it may take till phase 3 to get some of these things, but they're coming. Now, are we going to kick and scream when those things come that it's not the way Cape Canaveral always was? Well, it's change, and it's also the potential benefit of people who live here, not just guests and visitors, not just tourists. You could hop on one of these mini buses that SCAT is proposing and go to the beach, or go to the port, go to a bar at the port and not have to worry about how you're going to get home. So there's things coming that kind of fit with everything else we're hoping to have here in Cape Canaveral. So just wanted to put that out there.
So in the prior council, when they said there's no Sleepy Beach Town anymore, there's no Sleepy Beach Town anymore, because no matter where the tourists and vacationers are, they will be all over the town, is so short-term rental or no, next door, guess what? They're still going to be coming down through your front yard.
Keep it residential as long as we can.
I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
City Attorney, any comments to the conversations, or you think you need to clarify, or things need to be addressed?
Nothing for clarification, other than just to advise the council that the request tonight is consideration of approval of the amended and restated development agreement. And the council just needs to tell us whether or not the number that gets filled into the 2 highlighted boxes.
Okay, thank you. So attachment 2, page 4 and 5. Let's make sure we're, okay. Thank you, right there in front of me. So council, it's just that simple. I don't have an issue with what the owner is requesting. I think we have a unique opportunity here, and that would be the 10.
Yes, to verify with the owner, Mayor, I believe the owner is asking for the number to be 10 to be filled in both of those yellow highlighted areas. So that would be 10 years for phase 3 plan submittal, plus Phase 3 approval of 2 years, Phase 3 construction of 2 years, for a total of 14 years before the next time clock starts ticking, which is Phase 4, and that would be on page 5. That number would also be 10. So 10 plus 2 plus 2 in each case. Is that correct, Mr. Gall? Thank you. From CO, yeah, from each previous phase, yes.
So the screen that's before us, section I on page 4, the highlighted area, owner shall have no more than,
He's requesting 10?
the motion would be to
Yeah,
Right.
the motion would be, if you want to
approve 10.
approve the owner's request, it would be for both Phase 3 and Phase 4 plans, that the owner shall have no more than 10 years to file with the city all required permit applications for each of the 2 phases. And the way that it's written, it would be construed as that's separate from the time to approve the plans and separate from the time to develop the plans.
Okay, I see. Simplified it for us.
And the simple way is approve the agreement with the owner's requested timeframes or the staff's requested timeframes.
Yeah, that's
If
even
there's no
simpler.
other questions, this way, don't worry about we'll fill in the right number because it's in the agenda item. Just tell us whether you want the owner's requested timeframe or the staff's.
Muted.
Mr. Gall can do it quicker than 10 years,
He-
as long as it's no more than 10 years.
I'm sure he would want to if he could,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I just wanted to verify that it's, because it says no more than, so I just
Correct.
wanted to make
It's a
sure I
ma-
understood correctly.
It's a maximum subject to extension.
Okay.
One motion will do it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if we're all understand and agree, I think a motion for the, as the city attorney said, for the owner's request or city,
I'll make a motion that we approve the owner's phasing for the project.
And the agreement.
I'll second that.
I thought the mayor was going to do one motion.
Oh.
Maybe I misunderstood, but the mayor said
I
it's
would like-
okay to do one motion. So you mentioned the phasing, but don't forget that the motion to approve the agreement itself with the owner's requested timeframes.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the agreement and we adopt the owner's phasing.
Perfect.
I'll second the motion.
got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Kellum, got a second by Councilmember Jackson to approve the agreement and adopt the owner's request. City Clerk?
Councilmember Davis,
Or
Councilmember Jackson,
Or
Mayor Pro Tem Kellum,
Or
Mayor Morrison,
4.
Councilmember Willis.
4.
Passes 5-0. With that, our agenda tells us to adjourn. That meeting adjourned. Thank you.